airports, reduce the bureaucracy at our ports. We're going to take a look at the threshold and the duty-free threshold. We're going to move it from $50 to $100 come next fiscal year.
Shout, 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 shout.
I saw some reports coming out at the JLP conference, and I have a couple of questions. Why do we need to privatize garbage? Garbage collection is one of the few public services that ought to remain accessible to each and every person if we really want clean communities. So when we privatize garbage, are people going to have to pay to have their garbage collected? And what kind of research is this backed by? If our goal is to have clean communities, how did this policy become formulated? What is the justification for it? Because I think it's one of those instances where we allow a public service to deteriorate in such a way and get to such dire levels so that we can justify privatizing that service. When the Prime Minister visited Japan in 2019, I was there at a reception when he talked about how enamored he was with solid waste management in Japan and talking about all kind of fees and stuff to be leveled on people in Jamaica. And I was kind of taken aback because doesn't he understand that fundamentally what Japan gets right with solid waste management is just collecting the garbage on time? And why do we need to privatize it to do that? And if we're going to charge people to pay for it, what are we going to do when people can't afford to get their garbage picked up? The only way I see this working is if the government issues contracts to private people and pay them to pick up the garbage. Otherwise, it's just another political ploy to manufacture consent and get people to pay for a service that should be a free public service. The Prime Minister also announced that they're going to build 70,000 new houses over the coming years. And he admitted that the NHT has not been constructing the number of houses that it ought to fill the gap in the market. So then why did you take money from the NHT? The NHT was running with a surplus for many years. If you have known that there is a deficit in the production of the NHT, why wasn't that money reinvested into the NHT to ramp up the construction of houses? Why did you take the surplus money from NHT? It's not making sense. The other announcement they made was doubling the personal allowance from $500 to $1,000. I think it would be enough if it were not so selectively applied by the customs officers. And I'm really hoping to see more in the custom reforms bill that sets out very clear guidelines about how items are assessed, so that customs officers stop making these arbitrary decisions about what they think goods are valued. And that goes for the small imports that people make as well, because increasing the import fee, the import allowance from $50 to $100 to me is barely enough. Like in today's economy, just bear in mind what things cost these days. What can people reasonably buy with $100? But customs is a revenue generating agency for the government, and customs itself has admitted this. My issue is, it seems like they specifically target the small ordinary people making their small imports for most of this revenue, and they don't have the same energy for the major importers. They milk the small people for all this revenue. I don't think people have a problem with paying a fee to clear their goods. It's the exorbitant fees and the arbitrariness of it that is the problem. Another issue that came out of the conference was apparently we're going to have a Ministry of Peace. To do what? To do what our Ministry of National Security doesn't do, and our Ministry of Justice doesn't do. If it's one thing we can depend on our politicians to do, is to form a task force, a committee, or just jump all of that and go straight to forming a new ministry and hiring new staff and paying new people and promoting someone else to a new position so that they can justify making additional expenditure. What this announcement demonstrates to me is that our government has run out of ideas. And since they've run out of ideas and they want to give the appearance of doing something, they've said, here's something. The timing and venue for these announcements is also very deliberate because they don't want to be somewhere where they can be asked the tough questions to provide details about these grand, plans and actions that they have failed to take over the past couple of years and have now decided to take. And now, all of a sudden, having been in power for the past 7 years, they have just figured out what is the way forward. I'll give the government a break on customs reform, which they have been talking about for the better part of the last 5 years. But generally, these are not the kinds of announcements that should be made at a party conference. These are issues that affect every Jamaican, no matter their party affiliation. I am sick and tired of politicians acting as if the public assets that they hold in trust for us and the services that are due to us are some party secrets that they only share with us whenever they feel it's convenient to do so. If all these announcements come to fruition, I for one would be very happy for all Jamaicans. But I also don't see a need to applaud someone who suddenly decided to start doing a job that they begged for 7 years ago.